Hello and welcome. I'm Alan, and today I'm going to do what I should have done yesterday because I've just been busy doing a lot with painting and work. So I apologize that I've kind of been almost absent, but we're going to go ahead and do the news now. So let's start off as we always do with sports. The National Football League just held its draft uh, this weekend. I believe that it started on Thursday night, and the first pick going to the Arizona Cardinals, which I believe was Kyler Murray, the quarterback from Oklahoma. Next thing we'll talk about, let's get into the NBA and the playoffs. So let's do that. Pull up what it currently looks like. It's taking forever for it to load. Okay. I want to keep my ad blocker on, so forget about it. Alright. In the West, Golden State beat the Clippers 4-2, and the Rockets beat the Jazz 4-1. Currently, the Golden State Warriors lead the Houston Rockets 1-0. And the Portland Trailblazers beat the Oklahoma City Thunder 4-1, while the Denver Nuggets beat the San Antonio Spurs 4-3. And currently that is 0-0 between Portland and Denver. Meanwhile, in the East, the Milwaukee Bucks beat the Detroit Pistons 4-0, and the Boston Celtics beat the Indiana Pacers 4-0. Right now, Boston leads Milwaukee 1-0. And the Philadelphia 76ers beat the Brooklyn Nets 4-1, and the Toronto Raptors beat the Orlando Magic 4-1. And currently, Toronto leads Philadelphia 4-1 or 1-0. So we're just now getting into the semifinals. The only matchup that hasn't played is Portland Denver. Personally, I kind of expect. I have no idea. I haven't really watched basketball this year, so I couldn't give you a good indication of who I expect to come out of it. Although I'm a casual Celtics fan. So, that was the NBA. Let's take a look at the NHL playoffs, shall we? For the Stanley Cup. The Dallas Stars beat the Nashville Predators 4-2. The Toronto Maple Leafs were beaten by the St. Louis Blues 4-2. And right now the Stars and the Blues are tied 1-1. And also in the West, that's not Toronto. That's Winnipeg Jets. Sorry. Winnipeg Jets were beaten by the St. Louis Blues. Calgary Flames were beaten by the Colorado Avalanche 4-1, and the San Jose Sharks beat the Vegas Golden Knights 4-3. And right now, the Sharks and Avalanche are tied 1-1. Meanwhile, on the other side, in the East, the New York Islanders beat the Pittsburgh Penguins 4-0. The Carolina Hurricanes beat the Washington Capitals 4-3. And Carolina leads the New York Islanders 2-0. And the Columbus Blue Jackets swept the Tampa Bay Lightning, I believe it is. I believe it's Tampa Bay Lightning. I apologize if I've got that wrong. I know it's the Lightning. And the Boston Bruins beat the Toronto Maple Leafs 4-3. Right now, it's tied between the Bruins and the Blue Jackets. And that's how the Stanley Cup playoffs are looking. Now, with that said, let's kind of take a peek at how MLB is looking. MLB standings. Let's see. In the AL East, the Rays lead 18-9. They lead that division. And right behind is the Yankees at 17-11. In the AL Central, the Twins lead 16-9, with the Indians right behind at 15-12. And in the AL West, we have the Astros leading 17-11, with only a half game lead over the Mariners at 18-13. So yeah. Let's take a look at the National League. In the National League East, the Phillies lead 16-12. 16-12, and the Mets right behind at 14-13. In the NL Central, the Cardinals are 17-10, and the Cubs behind them at 14-12. And in the NL West, the Dodgers lead 19-11, with the Padres behind them at 16-12. And that is the National League. With that done, let's go ahead and look at science. See what we have kind of going on here in the science world. A closer look at critical B cell activities on the DNA. I was reading that on the DNA level. Okay. Ocean's tallest waves are getting taller. A glimpse of fleeting carbon-hydrogen bonds. Emperor penguins flee unsteady ice after unprecedented failure to breed. Uh-oh. Air pollution in China. A speedier pipeline to diagnose genetic diseases in seriously ill infants. And case study reveals a molecular origin for defective tooth enamel. Okay. See what else we have kind of going on. Neanderthals may have trapped golden eagles 100,000 years ago. Huh. Warming worsens inequality, a brave new overworld, and a foreign ties fiasco. Mm, so that's some of the stories going on with science. And of course, this is more or less based on sciencemag.org and its different magazines. Now, uh, history. Let's see what has been going on this week in history. There we go. And so the 20th is what we kind of want to go to. Yeah. April the 20th, 1999, two teen gunmen actually, killed 13 at Columbine High School, which was the first major school shooting in the U.S. There were other school shootings, but none that grabbed the attention like this did. Klebold and Harris. Like I said, I remember that day. Um, April the 20th, 2010. Massive oil spill begins in the Gulf of Mexico with the Deepwater Horizon. Let's see, is there any other moments here? April the 20th, 1986, Michael Jordan scores 63 points in a playoff game against the Boston Celtics. April 20th, 1898, President William McKinley asked for a declaration of war against Spain, which is how it's supposed to go in the U.S. The presidents are supposed to ask Congress because via the actual Constitution, only Congress has the right to make war. and yet Trump vetoes this resolution to um, remove ourselves from the war in Yemen, remove any act we have in it, and Trump vetoes it. He shouldn't have the right to sell them all that anyway to help make war on Yemen. That's not what you're supposed to do as president. It's the job of Congress to declare war, and he's usurping that legitimacy. Uh, April the 20th, 1861, Robert E. Lee resigns from the U.S. Army after Virginia secedes from the Union because he was so loyal to the state, and he became the lead commander for the Confederate States of America. The 21st. April the 21st, 2016. Musician and star Prince dies at age 57. And of course, I remember that. I grew up when his music was huge. Let's see, April 21st, what else happened? April 21st, 1836. Texas militia routs Mexicans in the Battle of San Jacinto during the War for Texan Independence. April 21st, 1989. Chinese students begin protests at the Tiananmen Square, which that is the protest in which the gentleman stood in front of the tanks with the bags and faced down the tanks. We don't know what's happened to that person, but he stands as a symbol against any brutality and barbarism. April the 21st, 753 BC, Rome founded. At least according to tradition. Remus and Romulus. What else? April the 21st, 1930. Prisoners were left to burn in an Ohio fire. A fire at an Ohio prison kills 320 inmates, some of whom burn to death when they are not unlocked from their cells. It is one of the worst prison disasters in American history. And the actual Ohio State Penitentiary was built in Columbus in 1834. Mm-mm. Let's see. April the 22nd. Well, I thought I said 22nd. Come on, computer. Work for me here. Why are you not wanting to go below that? Let me pull down the little strip thing here a little further, see if that'll help you. There we go. 22nd. April the 22nd throughout history. April 22nd, 1970, the first Earth Day. We haven't really paid much attention to it. Let's see. April 22nd, 1945, Hitler admits defeat. Although, of course, he stayed in the bunker and shot himself. He and Eva Braun were both shot, so. April 22nd, 2004, Pat Tillman killed by friendly fire in Afghanistan. He was making millions of dollars as a defensive back for the Arizona Cardinals playing in the NFL. He enlisted in the U.S. Army after the terrorist attacks on September the 11th, but was killed by friendly fire in Afghanistan. Let's see. April 22nd, 1937, actor Jack Nicholson is born. April 22nd, 1886, seduction is made illegal in Ohio. Ohio passes a statute that makes seduction unlawful, covering all men over the age of 18 who worked as teachers or instructors of women. This law even prohibited men from having consensual sex with women of any age whom they were instructing. Okay, that's a bit different. Seduction in a position of power. April 22nd, Senator Joseph McCarthy begins hearings investigating the U.S. Army. Happening during the Red Scare. He really caused a lot of panic. about communism here, and his ideas unfortunately haven't died off. Most people are like, communism, socialism, you know, and they're not even the same thing. But there's now just a fear of it in the U.S. Let's see. Okay. Next is April the 23rd. April the 23rd, 1564. William Shakespeare is born at Stratford upon Avon. In England. Also on the 23rd of April. Would you quit trying to move? April the 23rd, in the year 1014, King Brian of Ireland is murdered by Vikings. On April the 23rd, 1954, Hammer and Hank Aaron hits his first home run of his Major League Baseball career, and what would end up breaking Babe Ruth's all-time home run record. April 23rd, 1791, future President James Buchanan is born. Let's see. April 23rd, 1969, Sirhan Sirhan receives death penalty for the assassination of Robert F. Kennedy, who was on the campaign trail to try to become president. April 23rd, 1865, panic has seized the country, writes Confederate President Jefferson Davis. And that was at the point when Union troops were sweeping their way into the Confederacy and close to ending the war. Well, the war was already ended because I believe Robert E. Lee had already given up at this point. And the Confederate capital had been moved from Richmond, Virginia, further south into Alabama. April the 24th. April 24th in 1916, The Easter Rebellion begins, which is something that looks like it's dealing with the fight of Ireland to uh, pull out from under the UK. Also, April 24th, 1800, the United States Library of Congress was established. Let's see. April 24th, 1945. President Truman is briefed on the Manhattan Project. Essentially, we all know the Manhattan Project as the development of the atomic bomb. And Truman had no idea this was going on. FDR did, but Truman wasn't aware of it. Truman learns of the Manhattan Project. He has to decide on whether to use the bombs on Japan to end the war or not. And of course, he does on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Let's see. April 24th, 1781. British generals William Phillips and Benedict Arnold launch attack on Petersburg, Virginia. And of course, at this point, Benedict Arnold is already working for the British. He's kind of an interesting character because most people in the U.S. think of him as a traitor, but in truth, he was often overshadowed, and it kind of got to him after a while because he had the training and everything, and yet these other people like Ethan Allen were overshadowing him. So it wasn't just he was a traitor; it was an ego thing. April 25th, 1983, Soviet leader Yuri Andropov writes letter to U.S. fifth grader Samantha Smith. What else happened on April the 25th? Let's take a look here. April 25th, 2015, a magnitude 7.8 earthquake kills thousands in the nation of Nepal. April 25th, 2014, the Flint water crisis begins. And it's still not over, by the way. You know, the governor of Michigan at that time has proclaimed it over, but it's not. April 25th, 1964, Maple Leafs win their third Stanley Cup in a row, beating the Detroit Red Wings 4-0. And the series overall, they won 4-3. April 25th, 1719, Robinson Crusoe is published. April 25th, 1917, jazz legend Ella Fitzgerald is born. Let's see. April 25th. 1781. British General Lord Charles Cornwallis retreats from Guilford Courthouse in Wilmington and retreats to Wilmington, North Carolina, after being defeated by a 4,500 Continental Army soldiers and militia under the command of General Nathanael Greene. And of course, 81 is in the latter days of the American Revolution. So, and finally, the 26th. April 26th, 1954. 1954, people. Polio vaccine trials begin. What else happened on April the 26th? Which, if you noticed, we no longer have polio because we were able to treat it with a vaccination. April 26th, 2012, former Liberian President Charles Taylor found guilty of war crimes. April 26th, 2013, country music star George Jones passes. He stopped loving her today. April 26th, 1986. Test triggers nuclear disaster at Chernobyl. Let's see. April 26, 1937. Nazis test their new air force, the Luftwaffe, on Basque town of Guernica. Let's see. April 26th. Let's see. April 26, 1984. President Reagan visits China. Meeting with Chinese President Li Zianian. I probably butchered that horribly. I apologize. April 26th, 1977, Studio 54 opens in New York City. April 26, 1865, Abraham Lincoln's assassin John Wilkes Booth dies when the barn he's hiding in is set on fire. And April 26, 1711, Scottish philosopher David Hume is born. Now, with that done, let's take a look at the news. Not the Nintendo Entertainment System. News. Okay. Uh, we'll skip the news since I'm so far behind, because it takes me a while to go through that. But that's a look back on this past week, the 20th through the 26th. And I'll try to get back on track. I can't promise it. I've had so much going on. So I am trying to work on a video as well, though, for tomorrow. Although I've been so just unwilling to get anything done, I can't seem to get it finished. So anyway, I'll see you all again in the next video. But until then, later.